community increasingly is made up of like super smart people who move here for lifestyle reasons and that kind of thing. And Ethan basically, the company basically, he works for a company called Network out in San Francisco, and found out that they had hired an employee in Charleston. And my first contact was, I tell people, if anybody knows me, I have this brain dead time basically, and I mean brain dead because I'll straight to Jeopardy and then come back. But my brain dead time is the Wheel of Fortune. I just kind of sit there. And for those of you who know me, I'm always looking at my phone. So I get this email from the office manager in San Francisco saying, we need an office for 2 guys, basically. And that's how the whole conversation is. By next morning, about 8 o'clock, they'd already made a decision that they were going to do. This is how kind of fast it moves. So then from basically the office for 2, you have 5 people down there right now. 4. And that happened basically in like 2 weeks, so it was great. But I think just when I'm getting used to software as a service, Ethan basically is a games as a service expert. Gas.
I'm an expert at gas.
Exactly.
Lots and lots of gas.
And I was like, is it gas or is it goss? But I'll just read this because if I don't, I'll screw it up. So he specializes basically in the intersection between game design and monetization. Something that just about everybody should do before they even go in that direction. He's a part-time game designer, part-time product manager, part UX, and part marketer. And you must be a dream for those guys at Network.
Kind of a nightmare.
Yeah. Those skills, I mean, it's like, but I love somebody who can compartmentalize and think of those 4. That's currently he's working on the hit mobile game, a legendary Game of Heroes. Previously, Ethan served as a consultant providing monetization strategy assistance over 50 shipped games, including 2 of the top 15 top-selling console games and multiple top 150 grossing mobile games. So I think he's eminently qualified to address this, and then be recorded so we can push this out. Without further, Ethan Levi, and we're glad to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. So, as Ernest said, my name's Ethan. I work for a company called Network. We're a mobile game developer based out of San Francisco. We're so San Francisco that we don't have job titles, so I just tell people I do design and monetization work. Missing a screenshot. As Ernest said, so I've been working as a game designer for over 15 years. I've been a part of over 70 shipped titles in that time across every platform, ranging from PlayStation and Xbox, Facebook, mobile phones, PC, done gamification projects for fintech companies, and just about everything having to do with games. For the past 2.5 years, I've worked on a game called Legendary Game of Heroes, which was released worldwide a little over a year ago. To give you some stats on that, it has been a top-grossing game in the top 100 list in 83 countries around the world. It's been the top 5 grossing top 5 grossing app in 19 countries. So that's all apps, not just games. To give you a perspective, so over here is our worldwide launch, and this that we just hit recently on September 14th, I think that's our peak top grossing position, 79 in the US. So this is our growth over time, and we continue to grow, doing more players and more revenue pretty much every single day. And so this talk is about the business engine that drives that and enables that, because we're talking about millions of dollars a month with this one mobile game that you've probably never heard of. So this is all driven by something I like to call the golden equation. And before I explain what that is, we're going to start with a little bit of a mystery. We're going to go back to 2015, pretend that you are running a game and that game is making $1 million per day. That's Game of War. Pretty much every day you'll see it on the top grossing charts. Normally number 1, but between number 1 and number 5, I'd say, most days. So you're running a company, you're making $1 million a day or more with one game. What would you do? I think I'd probably hire someone to replace me, go to a beach and just let the money run in, right? But instead, around that same time, they wanted to raise more money. They wanted to raise $500 million. So give away more equity in their company where they have a game making $1 million a day to raise $500 million. What does a company that's pulling in over $365 million a year need with another 500? Like, what value do they actually get giving away equity that they need that money? And so my hope is by the end of the talk, you'll understand why they would want such a giant pool of money to help further grow their business. And it all happened. So this is what I was saying. By the end of the talk, you're going to understand what drives the business engine behind top-grossing games like Game of War and Legendary, and more broadly, anything in this freemium app economy. And really, these lessons you can take and extrapolate to any business because it's really very simple, right? This simple equation is not just for free games on the phones. It's for pretty much growing any business. It's really very similar to how I grew my consulting business over 3 years, right? It's a very broad lesson, but it's maybe thinking about it a little bit differently than most people tend to. So what's the equation? CLTV is greater than ECPI. And what does that mean? That means that the customer lifetime value is greater than the effective cost per install. So this whole talk is going to be explaining what that means. And just to give you a sense of the scope of the free-to-play games market and how successful one game can be, this is a headline from last year. So the first example, Game of War was doing $1 million a day. They're probably doing $1 billion a year now. This is a headline, Clash Royale tops 80 million in a month. Clash Royale is a game making $1 billion a year. So there are multiple games around the world making over $1 billion a year with an iPhone and Android app. Like, that is the potential if you build the right game and master this sort of equation. So let me explain really quickly what I mean by these two things. So we'll start with ECPI. This is the marketing side, effective cost per install. So there are many different marketing channels that you can use to spread the word about your game. Search engine optimization, word of mouth, editorial, which means if you ever go to the App Store, when you first open it up on either phone, you're getting content served to you by the editorial team at Apple and Google. And on our side, as an app developer, we have someone who one of their primary roles is to be the conduit between us and those app stores, because there's incredible value to being promoted by those stores. So just this week, we're part of a Google Games Against Hunger promotion, where we did some special content in the game along with a bunch of other companies, and we're donating money to charity to fight world hunger. And that has a benefit for us because that means they promote us on that page and we get more installs those days. So platform editorial just means, like, specifically on the App Store, on the app stores, they control the platform and they control the audience, and they have this incredible spigot of free marketing that nobody else has. And so a lot of app developers, as I said, I was a consultant when I worked on over 50 games, and a lot of people would think, well, if only Apple will feature us and Google will feature us, we'll have a hit. They feature a lot of games every week, and you can have a lot of downloads, but you might not. It's not a guarantee for success. But it's a major marketing channel when you're talking about the app economy. Paid user acquisition, TV, outdoor events, prints, podcasts, etc. So really, I'm going to focus on 3 things, which are word of mouth, platform, performance marketing. These other methods, TV, outdoor events, print, those are things that you need those giant budgets to do, and you need a specialized set of expertise. I have absolutely no idea how to buy billboards in a way that will drive people to download an app. And our company right now focuses mostly on performance marketing. But first, let me just give you an example about people who focus only on word of mouth and platform editorial, right? Which is really to say, we have no distribution strategy, right? We're going to launch our app, and we'll tell all our friends and our family and just pray and hope it works. So this was a blog post up on Medium last year about the shutdown of this company, Juicebox Games. And it was a really great postmortem. These guys were down the street from where I was working in San Francisco at the time. And I think this is kind of the key quote. "We never built the game that could serve as Juicebox's revenue engine. Funding infrastructure, build out, and development of more games." So like the number one failure, they raised a lot of money. They put games out there. They put them out there. They got really great editorial featuring when it came out. And those games did not generate enough revenue to keep their company going. And here you can see there are two ways for a game to become a business. Huge number of installs, make enough money with okay metrics, great core metrics enable profitable growth. So one way to become a hit is if millions and millions of people download your game or app organically because some famous YouTuber finds it and loves it, or just incredible word of mouth, or just magic. So like this is Crossy Road or Flappy Bird, things you might have heard of. Those games had millions and millions of installs. Those are true word of mouth hits. The second example he gives, IP. If you think about, remember Pokemon Go being the giant world-crushing sensation that was showing up on, not just my game enthusiast media, but the nightly news, right? That's an example of Pokemon's a 20-year-old intellectual property with a massive audience, and so that enabled it to get millions of free downloads. So if you don't magically go viral because your lottery ticket came up, or you don't have a incredible IP that people know and they'll say, "Oh, Pokemon," and download it, then the other channel is that you have really incredible business metrics and you can pay for people to install your app. So that's what we'll be talking about mostly here. This is a really fundamental question you have to ask when you're starting your business and planning out how you're going to grow, is what is your distribution strategy? And Juicebox's key learning was building a great product is not the best answer for what's your distribution strategy. There are so many apps out there for free, so many things out there that build it and they will come just isn't going to cut it. You're fighting for people's attention, and something that's just great, I think 200 great things launch on the App Store every day, right? So you are fighting for mind share and attention, and just building something great isn't enough, and you really have to think about what is it inherently about your business that is going to lead to its growth over time. So for a game like Legendary, performance marketing is really the key to this ECPI equation. And so what does that mean? That means every day we spend thousands and thousands of dollars on advertising on the mobile phone, on different channels, all sorts of different ad networks. Every one we do very intensive tracking on, so that we're paying a certain amount per install. We know when somebody downloads the game and starts playing it, where they came from, which campaign they used, which variation of imagery and copy was used, how much it cost. And we look at all that and we sort of cohort it up on it. In general, we're looking at in a daily cohort level. So what does that mean? That means, let's say I spent $10,000 today and it was $10 on average to buy and install with all my marketing. My daily cohort, I installed 1,000 people, right? And so we generally track people as daily cohorts and track their performance over time. And as we get further into this, that'll start making a little more sense. But your effective cost per install, on any day, you have your people you installed by paying, and then your organics. And so you take the total cost of how much you spent on advertising that day, and divide it by the number of total people who installed. You get your effective cost per install for that cohort. And just to give you a reference point, for quality users, you might be spending somewhere between $5 and $15 on average in a day to get an install for a free app. So you have to have really great business metrics to make up that, because a large percentage of people who install are never going to pay. So that's the effective cost per install side of the equation. Now let's talk about the customer lifetime value side of the equation. That is where I really do my work. I'm a game designer, so my work is figuring out which features to add to the game to get people to play, to engage with it every day, to have fun, and to spend money. And answering all those questions at the same time, basically, with new features that we add to the product. So think about your different revenue channels inside of a free app. You can have a premium price point, so what that means is pay $5, get the app. If you look on the top grossing charts, very few of the things that are the top 200 revenue generating things in the world have that pay gate in front of them. Most of them are free. You can have subscriptions. Subscriptions are doing really great in games and non-games media. We have a subscription offer for VIPs in our game that where we actually give them a lot of value for their money, and that works really well. In-app purchases, so you can buy permanent goods, consumable goods, content, and then advertising. So if you think about Facebook's business model, right, your eyeballs are their product, and most of what they're generating their money on is advertising. A game like Legendary makes the majority of its money through in-app purchases, a couple cents a day for every person on advertising and some money on subscriptions. So to untangle all that, to really walk through and explain all these metrics, I'm going to use this one data point, also from Game of War from 2016, where it was reported that paying players spent an average of $550 in their first year in Game of War. So not all people who play Game of War spend money, but those people who do spend money, on average, spend $550 within their first year of playing. And the thing is, if you're a spender, it's entirely likely that you're going to play for multiple years. So if $550 is their 365-day LTV, their 730-day LTV is even higher. And to give you the most extreme example I know of, right, that average of $550 per year includes a lot of people who maybe spend $1 once and never spend again, and people who spend, depending on the game, tens of thousands of dollars up to millions of dollars. So this is a headline. This guy spent $2 million in one game over the course of several years. And that's kind of the amazing capability of a well-designed free-to-play game, that they really allow people who have, this is just, I think he owns a chain of furniture stores or something. This guy is just he's got a lot of time and a lot of money on his hands. He spent $2 million to be the best player in the game in some game. So let's look at the customer lifetime value behind a $1 billion a year game. Let's really try and tease it out and use that one data point and walk through modeling to understand what it looks like when for an average spender to spend about $550 a year. So we're going to start with our first data point. $550 is my 365-day average revenue per paying user. I realize I'm being super jargony, but that means after installing we talked about that cohort before, and we'll look at all this at a cohort level, right? After installing, I install 100,000 players on this day from paid marketing and organic traffic. A year later, on average, someone who has spent money has spent $550. So we're going to start, and so that's that, customer lifetime value is the term I used at the start in the golden equation. So let's start by just mapping out the possibility space. What are the possible ways that this could be a profitable business? So first, we're thinking about the conversion rate of your users. What percentage of your users are converting to payers? So I'm just here starting at a really low number, 1/4 of 1%, all the way up to 5% of all players are spenders. Now, for a free-to-play business, 1% conversion can drive a really healthy business. So just think about that. You have 100 customers and only one of them is actually ever going to open their wallet, and you can build profitable businesses off of that. And actually, when I was consulting, a lot of the projects I worked on, one of the first tasks was even just thinking about how to get their conversion rate up to that 1%. When just hundreds and hundreds of apps and games are out there, and a lot of them have less than 1% of all their customers ever spending money in it. So we've got our possible ranges of conversion rates. And then that would then lead to these different levels of lifetime value for that cohort. So this is, if your payers are spending $550 in a year, and they're 2% of your audience, then your total lifetime value for all those players is $11. Right? And so then we'll start mapping out different ECPIs, different costs of acquisition. So I'll just start with $5. Let's assume that it's going to cost me $5 to install one player. If I have this 1% conversion rate and an average lifetime value of $5.50, I'm, after a year, can be profitable on spending $5 to install that player. So just to make it easy to interpret, I color-coded this and filled it out for a range of acquisition costs starting from $5, ranging up to $15. And so you can see there's kind of different levels of just burning money versus being incredibly profitable based on how strong the business engine is. And this is all based off of an incredibly strong 365-day LTV of like one of the top grossing games in the world. Most people are nowhere near that in their 365-day category. So this is kind of like how to think of that golden equation: lifetime value, effective cost per install. If things are working out, this is how you can grow your business profitably with marketing spending. So let's go down and let's just look at 1 day's worth of players to understand it. I think that'll really help you understand the dynamics here a little bit more. So I'm going to pick one cell in this possibility space that I find credible, which is to say, if I install a group of players, I'm going to convert 2.5% of them to spenders, and it's going to cost me $10 per player in advertising to get that cohort. Okay, so that's the data we're working with, and that's going to be, this number will be a little bit important. It's going to be a customer lifetime value of $13.74. So let's pretend I have an amazing $1.25 million advertising budget. If my effective cost per install is $10, let's say I spend all that money in a day, I would install 125,000 new customers that day. And so I'm going to start and just build a model to show what it looks like as that customer base gets smaller and smaller over time, but they spend more money, to see when we get profitable and what it looks like after a year. So I started just by modeling some key dates because it's really annoying to actually hand model 365 days of data. So I just said, here are our key dates, and then in green, here are our key stats. And I used these stats because they were what generated that $13 figure I said before. Using these assumptions, I reached that $13.74 average customer lifetime value after a year. So then what I did is built a thing with 366 rows going from day 0 to day 365, and I put my assumptions in green and then just smoothly interpolated between those two data points so that something's just going on day 1, we're at 25%, on day 7, we're 10%, and modeled it out and basically put those inflection points in, put the formulas in, and just dragged the rows down to see where the data led us. And so, let's see. Once I had all that filled out, I then put in the equations to figure out what my life-to-date revenue is and what my return on investment is. So you can see right here, day 0, I've spent 1.25 million and I've made $3,000 and I'm 1.25 million in the hole, more or less. So I've made negative $9.98 per every player that I've installed that day. Now the key point in this model happens on day 294 using these assumptions. And it's saying, I should have pointed this out earlier, day 0, I install my 125,000 players. A year later, I'm expecting 1% of them to still be customers of mine. Everyone else has gone away. And so after spending $1.25 million on advertising, a year later I have 1,250 players left in the software engaging with my game. So what happens on day 294? This is a critical day because on day 294, I make a profit for the first time. And that's the day, that is the payback day. From that day forward, so long as those players keep playing the game and keep spending money, I am now profitable on my marketing spend. And so what that looks like is, I installed my players, my $1.25 million worth of players, lost an incredible amount of them right away. Like huge drop in the first day or two, and then a really slow decline over a long period of time. And on the bottom, what you see is every day the amount of revenue I'm getting from those players is increasing each and every day on average because the base of people are getting smaller and those people are more likely to spend money and they're more likely to spend more money. And so this is what it looks like when you have a really strong business engine. And so if I look at my golden equation again, customer lifetime value versus effective cost per install, I spent $10. This is player age over the first year. Day 294 is that crossover day. That's the day where I start being profitable. So to look at it again, to just look at my return on investment over time, for most of that year after I spent my $1.25 million, I'm just in the hole. But because of the confidence I have in my metrics, I know eventually, day 294, I'll hit my payback point and I'll be profitable on that investment, on that marketing investment from that day forward. And I will keep being profitable so long as those players keep playing. And so what's nice on a game like Legendary is that we've been live for over a year. We have a lot of data, and that data enables us to profitably spend money and to actually have confidence, right? It's really, it's easy to just take $100,000 and throw it to an agency and say, buy me a bunch of Facebook ads, and just burn that money, right? It's easy for them to spend it wrong. It's easy for you to be driving users to a business that can't ever possibly recoup it. But when you have the metrics right, you can grow your business over time using acquisition. And so day 294 is a really credible payback window. I can't tell you what Legendary's payback windows are, but they're much shorter than that, and they're pretty industry leading. Our game does an incredibly effective job of, once people install, getting them to play for hours and hours a day, many, many sessions for days to come, and also of finding those paying players with an appetite to spend and giving them a lot of reason to spend. And because of that, when we spend money on user acquisition, we may start being profitable much faster than pretty much every competitor I'm aware of. So let's go back to our mystery. Why is it that a game that was making $365 million in a year at least decided to give away more equity for $500 million? What did they possibly need $500 million for? Using all the assumptions I've modeled out, if they were able to deploy all $500 million on marketing at that level, at that $10 per install level, After a year, they'd make $187 million in profit. And after 2 years, they'd make even more profit against that investment. And so, I say to people a lot, running a freemium business is a lot more like running a hedge fund than it is like selling games at a computer store. And hopefully this modeling exercise and walking through these data points help explain to you how it is that all these apps and games that are free, how they can possibly grow by spending money on marketing, and actually how tough it is to profitably grow your business through marketing, because you're competing with games like Game of War and games like mine, where if there's somebody out there on Facebook who has the indicators that they might be a customer of mine and they might be a customer of yours, I'm probably willing to spend a lot more money to get them to see my ad than you are. And so it's a really, really brutal market out there for advertising-driven businesses. And so this was, all of that math boils down to a giant return on investment on that marketing spend. Obviously, this doesn't take into account the cost of building the software and the ongoing overhead of all the people you have to employ to profitably run a business like this and all the server costs and everything. But it's still, if they landed that financing round, they probably used it to make a lot of money. So that's kind of the bulk of the talk. I hope now that you have a solid understanding of what it means to run a freemium model app. And if you see a headline like this and you see someone say, "We never built a game that could serve as Juicebox's revenue engine," you know what it means, kind of what goes into that revenue engine. And when you hear me talk about Legendary, you understand how it is that we've grown our player base and our revenues every month for over a year since we've launched worldwide. So thank you for listening. I'm brand new in town. I'm looking to make connections with anyone who's interested in tech and gaming and free to play. Follow me on Twitter if you want to hear what I'm saying about freemium business model and learn more. Send me a message, send me an email if you're interested in learning more, if you're into games and technology or any of the dynamics I talked about. Happy to grab coffee, happy to grab lunch, and thank you for listening. And I'll take questions if anyone has them.
I have a question that's so, like, pre-literate, okay? I won an innovation contest at a local hospital.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a communications person, and they want me to put together an app for the hospital for people to be able to rate meetings and presentations.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're asking for me to do is, I've already put out on a PowerPoint how it works, is to not a working model, but just visually what it would look like. And I've had the hardest time finding somebody to do that. Like, what kind of skill sets should I be looking for?
Mm-hmm.
Or,
Yeah.
it's like I don't even know what to ask, and clearly I haven't been asking it right because I haven't found that person yet.
Right. So I think, so you've got an idea for an app you're trying to build. And the reality is you're going to probably have to go to an agency that builds apps at some point to get it from end to end.
Well, they think that their people can build it.
Okay, they think their people can build it, which is good because actually, like, the cheapest way to start is that you need to find probably a UI UX designer, user interface, user experience, to take your ideas and translate them into prototypes.
Right.
Those prototypes can be very cheap to build because it's basically a very interactive slideshow.
Mm-hmm.
Like, half of my week is basically spent making interactive slideshows. And it's very fast, and it's much cheaper than writing actual code.
Oh, right. That's
And
what
so
I mean.
you're looking for someone who has experience in that to help you take those ideas, and you can get it to the point where it's on a phone and anyone can click through it and feel like they're using a real app
Right,
to
but
get
I don't
the experience.
need to get that. I just need to get the pre-step.
Yeah, and the pre-step is the user interface and user
Uh-huh.
experience design.
Ernest has got resources. If you talk to Ernest afterwards, he'll tell you 3 shops in town that'll
Okay.
do that pretty reasonably.
There's also, and I don't know if you guys know this, we just got a request, that's the reason I know, there's an indie game design user group basically in town, so I'll kind of make the introduction.
Oh yeah, I met Steve. Did Steven email you?
Yeah, actually, they want to have the user group meetings over here, so Kristen just pulled it up and reminded me that basically, I haven't met Steven, but I think what's interesting about gaming basically is that they sort of Kids Studios. They really, I really haven't kept up with, who's actually building out games and that kind of thing. And the reason you're here is because of Kids Studios. Misfortune, I guess they decided to wind down. I don't think they actually wound down because the game just never took. Or the games that this is coming out of Atlanta that's basically got a shop on Johns Island. And so there are some key players that, that network wanted to pick up, that kind of, so that's why they're here. But I think it adds that dimension of the community, and appreciate the expertise, so we have somebody almost in-house now, since you're next door. I appreciate it, Ethan will be here. I'm sorry, Kevin, you got a question?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, so, in terms of moving that inflection point forward so you're probably faster, do you prioritize, intensifying the spend versus increasing the percent of people who spend? Do you prioritize one or the other? Do you try to do both?
We walk a very fine tightrope between, it's almost like there are players who play the game and they want to spend money. They're actually happy to. And there are things we know we can do to put this, it's not putting the squeeze on them. It's basically like putting things in front of them we know they'll want, and marketing it in the game and giving them a reason to. But we know that if we do that too aggressively, like if someone has a desire to spend $100 over the course of 3 years, I don't want to squeeze them really hard here so that I can get $25 now and then they quit. Because I want my players to be playing both free and paid for as long as possible. And so every week and every day there's a whole live operations team that runs events and puts things on sale. I basically build tools for them to use, and we're having discussions about different conversion rates and average revenue per monetizing player that day, and using these different benchmarks. And the short version is like, we try and improve everything all the time, but we try and do it in a way that puts the right amount of pressure on our players and doesn't give them that reason to say, I'm done with Legendary. Because, in almost all instances, I would rather have that $100 over 2 years than that $25 in the first month, and then that's it.
Regarding customer demographics, just in a general context, senior citizens, the aging sort of market, is there a steep drop-off in terms of the profitability of engaging that cohort with electronic games, or are they game averse?
No, not at all.
Spending averse.
Actually, it's just a different. It takes different types of games. So, I talk about primarily a certain sector of the market that's like high ARPDAU products. So we have a small player base, and for every player, we're on average getting a lot of money. Whereas something like Candy Crush or a slot machine game has an enormous player base, and out of that gets a much smaller amount of money and is generally cheaper to market to, because their market is so much bigger. So if you remember in the presentation, I said there's like a 294-day payback window. A top-grossing slot machine game that's market is primarily female 50 and up, they might have a 2-year payback window. But slot machine games can be so sticky that if you know you can operate your business that long, you can get there and grow your game profitably, so long as you can take those risks. So, I think there are plenty of examples in the marketplace that show that seniors on are using iPads and iPhones all the time as an entertainment device while watching TV, for instance, and they're willing to spend. They know how, and there are games and apps out there that cater to their preferences. And it's just kind of, it's a different engine that uses all the same features, basically.
All right, we'll wrap up. Ethan will be here for a couple of minutes. Couple of items. Charleston Mix, I guess, is a sponsor of this polo game up in Ravenel. So we have tickets. Their face value is $50. Anybody might want to go out to Ravenel and watch some polo this weekend. I think the weather looks like Sunday's Saturday's about the 2 days. So they're here on this table, so feel free to take them. Number one. Number two, November is our last Fridays at the court for the year, and I think what we're going to do is try to expand it to an hour and a half. And this is because some of my interests are kind of turning from a community standpoint to kind of investment a little bit. So what I'm going to do is invite 3 companies, just talk about basically what their product does, why. So obviously it's a product company basically, and why. There's one here basically where we've got just a gentleman who's interested in investing in it. And quite honestly, what drove it is I don't know what they really do in terms of the nuts and bolts. I know generally what he does. When I started getting calls to connect with him from Indiana and New York, he must be onto something that he doesn't know. So I think it'd be kind of interesting to just kind of have. I've got to keep a tail and see what product he's a product guy as well. I know 2 that I'd like to basically have out here. So just it's not necessarily a face of innovation which we've done in the past. This is actually 3 companies, but here's what I do and this is why you should have wanted to have it and that kind of thing. So I think it'd be just expand it to an hour and a half and just have 3 companies present. I think it'd be kind of cool, and all local guys obviously. So, but I appreciate you coming out today. And for those of you guys who don't know, these presentations are recorded and available. And you go to community, the first thing you'll see is Fridays in the Corridor, and with Ethan's permission, basically, I'll put a PDF of the slide deck up there as well. All right, thank you again.
Thank you.